From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. So did you have a good holiday weekend? I guess this is still the holiday weekend. A lot of people have Monday off. July 5th. I always like July 5th because it always reminds me of that great play by Lanford Wilson, The 5th of July. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful play. I saw it in New York on Broadway when I was just a kid. It was my first visit to New York. I was with a group, and I split off from the group on that particular day, and I went and saw this play. And the play is about a group of family and friends, just, sort of trying to find their way in the world, what's next for them. They were very wrapped up in the peace movement, but the setting of the play is a couple of years after the end of the war in Vietnam. So they're just sort of trying to find their footing. Richard Thomas was in the lead role at that time. You may remember he was most famous for playing John Boy on The Waltons. And he's a teacher. His character is a teacher. And at the very end of the play, he is grading papers. He's listening to a story that was put on tape by one of his students. The story is about some space explorers. And here are some of the final words of the play. After they had explored all the suns in the universe and all the planets of all the suns, they realized that there was no other life in the universe and that they were all alone. And they were very happy because then they knew it was up to them to become all the things they had imagined they would find. And when I heard that, it just moved me so, especially because it came at the end of this very beautiful and moving play. Those particular words just sent me into a full-on cry, just blubbering, tears flowing. And then the lights went up. That was the end of the play. All right, curtain call, lights up. And I'm just trying like hell to compose myself, so embarrassed that I'm just in full tears at this beautiful experience I just had. And people are just very calmly and happily standing up and filing out of the theater. So the 5th of July just always reminds me of that pivotal moment in my life when I was overcome by art. And it is a beautiful, wonderful play. You should see it if you get a chance. 5th of July. So, it was a fun weekend. I got to see my Milwaukee Bucks win the Eastern Conference Championship, so that's a lot of fun. For those of you outside of my area, sorry, I won't bore you with all of this. I know how bored I get with the NBA playoffs as soon as my team is eliminated. So assuming you feel the same way, I won't go into too much detail about that. But it is an awful lot of fun around here. And I've got a nice view of Fiserv Forum right out my window. So it's been a lot of fun listening to the radio broadcasts of the games and looking out at Fiserv Forum as it's all unfolding. It's been fun. I went out to Heartland to see the game at my sister's. Because as you know, I don't have cable. I never ever pay for media. That's my religion. So I went out to Heartland to my sister's to watch Game 6 because I had a feeling, well, this could be it now. And it was. So that was a lot of fun. Oh man, though, the Burbs. Just a couple miles down the road from my sister's house out in Heartland. Big old huge ass yard sign. Like this big 15, 20 foot banner. Trump DeSantis 2024. Lord mercy, what are we going to do with these people? What else? What else about the weekend? Oh, yesterday for, about 8 hours, I had the last 4 bars of Scott Joplin's The Entertainer. on a loop. Somebody outside my window. I don't know where this was coming from. Let's see. How does it go? Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Just on a loop for hours and hours and hours. It was like, kind of like an ice cream truck kind of a thing. I don't know where, but it was just stuck on a loop right outside my window all yesterday afternoon. 4th of July. I'm glad it's over. I never know how to feel about it. I mean, you could probably guess what I'm going to say. It's kind of standard. It's not really very original, but, I don't have to be original all the time. America, the United States of America, largely sucks. We were born in war, committed genocide on the indigenous peoples of this continent. We enslaved Africans by the millions, and it's a bad, bad history. Now, what's good about America is the idea. It's a really good idea, The whole government of, by, and for the people, and democracy, and liberty, and justice for all, and, it's a fine idea. It really is. So, I love the idea. And if I'm going to celebrate at all on July 4th, I'll celebrate the idea. But it's pretty hard to just, wave a flag and be quote-unquote patriotic. That's another thing that I hope you agree with me. This ridiculous notion from the Republicans, and now they're DeSantis in Florida, Abbott in Texas. These are the two poster boys, these two Republican governors who are doing the most damage and kind of leading the way with actual state legislation telling teachers how to teach history. There was one, where was this? Was this right here in Wisconsin? I forget now. I think it was Wisconsin. They're proposing a law, an actual law requiring the Star-Spangled Banner be sung before every sporting event. And I mean every little league baseball game, every little pee-wee soccer game. It doesn't matter, all the way up through high school, college, and the pros. They're proposing a state law that you have to play the national anthem. Forced patriotism through flags and anthems and that sort of thing. What Republicans are pushing for these days is quintessentially un-American. If you think of America, again, as I do, as an idea of freedom, of justice, of equality, of liberty. To have this shallow, forced patriotism, to enact in law the ideas that can be taught in high schools and grade schools and universities, that's as far from American as you can get. So, every 4th of July I have these thoughts too. And I would hope that you agree with me that people who protest, they're the real patriots. They understand what America is. People who want to criminalize protest and put forced patriotism into law, they have way more in common with the Chinese Communist Party and with the Taliban and any other little sort of Nazi fascist regime you can think of. They have way more in common with them than they do with people who actually love this country. And again, I wouldn't go that far. I do love the idea. But as far as allegiance, no. I'm a human being on the planet. My allegiance is only to the planet itself, my fellow humans, and my fellow non-human animal and plant buddies. And I want to do whatever it takes, and I want to serve however I can, just to make sure we're all happy, healthy, and free. And for me, that means pretty radical things. It means open borders. It means universal basic income. So I'm about as far from a nationalist as you can get. But I do love the idea. America is a very nice idea on paper. And fighting for that idea and that ideal, that never gets old. That's good. I'm good with that. All right, so we put the 4th of July behind us. Now come the dog days of summer. And before you know it, it's such a quick sprint. Oh my God, every year, right? It is such a quick sprint from the 4th of July to Halloween, you know? And it goes boom, boom, boom. It goes like that. We get the dog days. It's hot and then it's not. And the nights start getting a little longer. The days start getting a little shorter. It's like, what's going on? It happens so fast every year. So we'll enjoy the lazy days if and when we can. Well, speaking of dog days and lazy days, Congress is, are they going to get anything done this summer? Maybe you know better than I do. I have to look this up. Are they still scheduled to be off for most of the rest of the summer here? That's kind of how they usually do it. Are they actually going to get voting rights done here in the next couple of weeks? I mean, it's going to take this great 180 from Sinema and Manchin, senators who are, as I speak at least, still supporting the filibuster. But I guess there are cracks in the wall there. That's some commentators are saying, yeah, they think that there might be a case where Sinema and Manchin maybe give in on that, especially after the Supreme Court decision just last week that further gutted the Voting Rights Act. So some optimistic commentators, I'm not going to offer an opinion, but some are saying, yeah, maybe Sinema and Manchin see the light and see that there is no other choice, that there has to be action to protect voting rights, and it has to happen now. Another commentator I heard, I'm sorry I can't give her credit because I don't remember now who I heard this from, but over the weekend she made a very good point. She said it's only a matter of weeks here before the redrawing of districts starts to happen in the states. And this is, I mean, very, very important on the calendar, because part of, I guess it's H.R. 4, there's 2 voting bills out there. And the big one, H.R. 1, that's the sweeping bill. But H.R. 4 has some very important specifics in it, and one of them regards gerrymandering. So if the Senate can put the filibuster aside, and if they can pass H.R. 4 in the next couple of weeks before Republican state legislatures get their dirty, grubby little hands on these redistricting maps, well, this could make a huge difference in the 22 midterms. So it's urgent. And again, boy, I wish I could give her credit. Where did I hear this over the weekend? I forget. Anyway, that's an important point. As far as infrastructure and all of that, I don't know. I don't even know where that stands at the moment. I don't think there's been any progress. But I'm going to be watching for this voting rights issue and to see if anything can happen before they go off for their August recess. Of course, the other big news last week was this Weisselberg guy, the CFO of the organization. 15 counts, 15 felonies he's charged with. So let's see if he flips on the Orange Menace. One kind of interesting headline, he had one of his rallies. By the way, who except for Mussolini and Hitler, can you name any other figure who has rallies like this? Anyway, reading from CNN yesterday, former President Donald appeared to acknowledge the core facts in New York prosecutors' case against the organization and its chief financial officer, even as he characterized the charges as a political attack aimed at him. Listen to this. Trump told a crowd in Sarasota, Florida on Saturday night that every company does fringe benefits. But he mocked prosecutors for pursuing the charges, saying it is, quote, reminiscent of a communist dictatorship targeting your political opponents, unquote. The comments mark the former president's most substantial yet on the charges after they were unsealed last week in the first criminal case against the namesake company. Quoted again, never before has New York City and their prosecutors, or perhaps any prosecutors, criminally charged a company or a person for fringe benefits, he said. Fringe benefits? Murder's okay. Human trafficking, no problem. But fringe benefits, you can't do that. Well, well, of course you can. Of course you can, because it's illegal. And if you're just kind of following the headlines of this story, as admittedly I have been, because we've been disappointed way too many times. It's like, give me a story when something actually happens. Well, something really is happening here. This is millions and millions and millions of dollars we're talking about. This is not just a little technicality. We've often talked about, I've said myself, they couldn't pin anything on Al Capone, all of his many crimes, all of his corruption, racketeering, and murder. No, they finally got him on tax evasion. So, maybe that's how we're going to get the Orange Menace. I don't know. But this is definitely not small potatoes. We're talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about really seriously cooking the books. Literally having 2 sets of books like they do in the movies. This is pretty bad stuff. And Alan Weisselberg is, I don't know, what is he, close to 80 years old? He's looking at 15 felony counts. If they're doing this to flip him to get the Orange Menace, then I'd say they have a pretty good shot. Who knows? Who knows? You know how slow these things go. They're all going to be dead and gone before anybody gets to be put in an orange jumpsuit. But God, just how satisfying would it be? How great would it be to see the Orange Menace in an orange jumpsuit? Wouldn't it be? And a prison haircut. How great would that be? Well, we can dream. We can continue to hope. Keep hope alive, as somebody once said. By the way, have I ever told you this story? This is my own personal delusion of grandeur. But I'm just convinced that it's true. I volunteered for the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign in 1988. And since I had experience as a graphic artist, and especially doing sort of oversized banners, this is something that I had done in my work life. So the first day down at campaign headquarters, they just had me stuffing envelopes and doing mundane things. But then I told them, I said, I know how to paint banners. So by day 2, that was my job. So I would paint these huge oversized banners. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. I'd do these big banners for events. Anytime Jesse Jackson would come to the Bay Area, which he did several times, this was the run-up to the California primary. So there were several stops, and I made a bunch of banners. And at the time, he had, I don't know, a half a dozen or more little catchphrases that he would use. And this would be a better story if I could remember the other catchphrases. I should try to figure that out. I should go back, search my memory. But the point is, keep hope alive was only one of at least a half a dozen or more catchphrases that he used. And I kind of liked that one. And I made a big, huge banner saying, "Keep hope alive," that was mounted right behind him when he spoke. And so on the national news, this was a big kick for me. I'd see clips of Jesse Jackson on the CBS or ABC or NBC News, and there's my banner right behind him. So this particular speech got a lot of coverage, and there was my banner, "Keep hope alive," right behind him. And I swear to God that from that point on, "Keep hope alive" became not one of several catchphrases, it became the catchphrase. Because at that rally in San Francisco, and every subsequent rally, they're chanting, keep hope alive," at the end of every big speech. So, in my own personal delusion of grandeur, I was the one responsible for making "Keep Hope Alive" the quintessential Jesse Jackson catchphrase. And I'm going to go to my grave believing that that's true. And that's the way it happened. So there you go. Well, let's see. Headlines here. Over the weekend, the Vatican. Reading from CNN now. The Vatican has indicted 10 people, including an Italian cardinal, for several alleged, I know what you're thinking, no, not pedophilia, financial crimes, including extortion, corruption, fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and abuse of power. The investigation, which started in July 2019, was carried out by the Vatican in cooperation with Italian authorities and revealed a vast network of ties between financial market operators who generated substantial losses for the Vatican finances, a statement from the Vatican said on Saturday. Crimes of embezzlement, abuse of office, bribery. One cardinal allegedly used money from the Vatican to benefit his two brothers' businesses, according to a detailed report by Vatican News, which is what led the Pope to fire the cardinal last year. Okay, somebody smarter than me, and there are a lot of you out there. Could you please explain to me how we got here? How in the world did we get here? With churches generally, the church generically, but specifically the Catholic Church and the Vatican. My Lord, for centuries, the power, the money, and to this day, seemingly out of reach with their power. Well, not completely out of reach. 10 people have been indicted. Now, it's the Vatican itself that's doing the indicting, so we'll see what happens here. Of course, the Vatican is its own separate, independent nation state, so they've got their own laws and their own court system, and it'd be kind of nice to hold them accountable in a wider, more independent courtroom, wouldn't it? But I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that ever happens. We have a world court in The Hague, of course, but that's only as strong as the litigants allow it to be. The United States and Americans have been brought up on charges at the World Court several times, but nothing ever comes of it because it requires the cooperation of the nation itself, the nation being accused, which is not the greatest system in the world. You have to at least recognize the authority, the viability of the court, in which the U.S. just refuses to do. So anyway, that sidelight aside, we'll see what happens here. But yeah, definitely a big headline, one of the big headlines of the weekend. You don't see this every day. You guys know I was raised Catholic, and it's a very big, complicated, and also at the same time, a very profound and personal set of problems. A lot of us recovering Catholics, as we call ourselves, because it is. It's like being an addict or an alcoholic. You can never claim to be fully cured or fully separated from the infliction. It'll be with you till the day you die. But you can recover from it, and you have to keep recovering every day. So we call ourselves recovering Catholics. Yeah, it is just one messed up institution, just from top to bottom. They are, Catholics around the world are heavily, heavily involved in national politics, even down to local levels. And they've got some power to throw around. It's more than just a voice from a pulpit. They've got money, they've got lobbyists, they organize, they've got power. Anything regarding LGBTQ plus rights, same-sex marriage, anything regarding abortion, women's reproductive rights, they are in there, organized, and more often than not having some pretty nice victories. They've got how many members of the Supreme Court now? U.S. Supreme Court, I think, is 9 Catholics. Am I wrong about that? I forgot the total. But it's a majority, certainly, of Catholics. And don't get me wrong, I am all for freedom of religion. I'm also for freedom from religion. And I think those two go hand in hand. In fact, I think one is meaningless without the other. Freedom of religion as a concept is meaningless unless it contains, as a part of its definition, freedom from religion. Speaking of which, this whole thing about the voting to, they didn't mention his name, of course, President Joe Biden, but everybody knew what they were doing. This decision to allow parish priests to deny communion to parishioners who go against Catholic teaching, especially in regard to abortion. Now, here's where you might be surprised. I actually don't have a big problem with that. I kind of don't get it. A religion is a private club, And if you want to join that religion, then you have to agree with the rules of that private club. And if you disagree with the rules, then go start your own club. Now, I think it's all crazy and ridiculous. I also think that they should have no direct influence in politics, and I think that's where people are making their arguments. But the general concept of what they do in their own churches, that's entirely up to them, as long as they're not breaking any laws. You know, there are times when religious practices conflict with secular law. Like, you know, you can't butcher a goat on your front yard and sprinkle blood on the neighbor kids. You know, I don't care if that's a religious ritual. No, that kind of flies in the face of basic local health ordinances. Okay, so yeah, there are times when secular law butts up against religious practice, and secular law needs to win 9 times out of 10. If there's good, rational reason for these laws, whether it's safety or health or basic justice, civil rights, sure. So that's where I draw the line. In cases where churches and religions are practicing their own little voodoo, however they choose, in their own private sphere, and not forcing it on anybody else, I say go for it. That's the very definition of freedom of religion. Keep me out of it. That's the definition of freedom from religion. So as ridiculous as I think you are, I'm not going to pass any laws against you. All right, now, in their own private sphere, in their own crazy little religious ideas, they want to deny communion, which is the holiest of all the sacraments. It's sort of the foundational sacrament of all of them. It's a big deal. It's a big f***ing deal, as Joe Biden would say. Within their private sphere, if they want to deny that sacrament to any one of their adherents because they're not meeting up to code, I have nothing to say about that. That's entirely your deal. So if they want to deny communion to Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, okay. It's kind of nobody's business. That's their own private little crazy house. That's their own private little club. So I'm not with the standard kind of liberal take on this one. I don't care. I'm the first to criticize the Catholic Church for all of its power and the way it uses that power in the public sphere, this financial corruption they've got going on, their money and lobbying in local, state, and federal legislatures. Sure, I'm the first one to wag my finger. But what they do behind their stained glass windows, as long as it's not against the law, you know, as long as they're not diddling altar boys, just the denying communion to those they deem unworthy, totally their business. I don't like it. I think it's stupid, but they have every right to do it. That's the whole point of religion. You can do your crazy ass shit. And as long as it's not illegal, boom. Okay. What are we going to do? All right. Well, always a lot to talk about, especially on the first day of a new week. We'll see what we can get to. So I'll talk to you tomorrow. I do love you. I'm Charles Purcell.